counselor, and welcome to Parakaleo Counseling. I hope that you are keeping well wherever you're joining us from in the world, and thank you for stopping by. Let me start by apologizing for the past 2 weeks that we have not posted anything on the channel, and especially for the series that we were doing on radical acceptance. I was just dealing with some technical difficulties, which I'm still resolving, but thank God we're here today and ready to dive into the next episode. And today, we're going to be talking about the actual steps that you can take to practice radical acceptance or to reach a state of acceptance when something has happened to you. We've established in the past 3 episodes that bad things happen, terrible things happen, traumatic things happen, situations that are unchangeable, at least in the immediate or in the foreseeable future, situations that change our lives sometimes permanently. They do happen to all of us, and we all need to deal with them. Sometimes we need to heal, sometimes we need to forgive because it is because of somebody else's actions that this thing has happened. And radical acceptance is one of those tools, one of those skills that you can use in order to move on. It's one of those techniques that you can use to actually minimize your suffering from the situation, because sometimes when something that is painful or hurtful has happened, we don't suffer directly because of the event, but because of the emotional distress that we experience. And most often, some of that distress is because we fail to accept the situation and we continue to ruminate, we continue to ask why, and we continue to, it's almost as if we butt our heads against a brick wall and we suffer unnecessarily for long periods of time, especially if this event or this situation is permanent and you cannot change it. You need to come to a place of acceptance and start looking into the future instead of into the past. And so before I go into the steps, there are just a few points that I want us to take note of when we are talking about acceptance in general and radical acceptance in particular. The first point to note is that it is a process. And it's something that does not happen overnight. It does take time. So give yourself a little grace, or maybe it's a family member who's needing to accept something. Give them a little grace. And remember that some days you're going to feel like you're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But remember, it is a process. The next thing to remember, and this applies to all situations, but I'm going to give 2 examples. The next thing to remember is that accepting a situation does not mean doing nothing about it. And the first example I want to use is if, for example, there's addiction in the family or a mental illness, you or your partner or a child or another family member has been diagnosed with schizophrenia, for example, or they're showing signs of alcoholism, for example, or they're addicted to drugs. You need to face the facts of the situation. Yes, my son is hooked on drugs. This is what we are dealing with right now. These are the facts of the situation. But it does not mean that you then hide in shame. You do nothing about it. You do your best to present a picture of perfection when in actual fact your family is being consumed by dysfunction. Radical acceptance or accepting the situation needs to be coupled with action. You then need to start asking yourself, where do I get help for me, for my partner, for my child, or whoever it is in the family? The other example I want to give is that of domestic violence or abuse in the home, at work, or wherever, whatever relationship that is. You need to come to a place where you face the facts that I'm in an abusive relationship. This is what is happening here. It's not a mistake. They're not just failing to control their emotions sometimes. No, this is an abusive relationship. So you need to accept that. And for that, you can use radical acceptance. However, you also need to move on to say to yourself, what must I do about this situation? Do I need to leave to secure my safety for me and my children? Do I need to find a pastor, find a counselor? Do I need to report to the police? Do I need to go to the hospital to get my health checked? Ask yourself all those questions. After you have accepted that there is abuse in this family, at work, or whatever relationship, ask yourself what next you must do. It must be coupled with action, as in all cases with radical acceptance. And the last point to note is that the first point of action actually for a believer is to pray about it. Pray about it. Because no one situation is the same for everybody. Pray about it. while you take the practical steps that you need to take, pray about it so that God can give you guidance and show you which way to go. So let's move straight into the actual steps that you take in radical acceptance. The first step really is to acknowledge, identify, name the situation or the event that you are dealing with, that you are struggling to come to terms with. I used an example in the previous episodes of a partner who finds out that they are HIV positive, and it's because their partner has infected them. And it's also because their partner stepped out of their marriage boundaries and betrayed and cheated on them. So in that instance, you actually have two situations that you are needing to accept and deal with. Number one is that you now have an HIV diagnosis and that you are going to be living with HIV. The second one is you're dealing with a betrayal. So name and identify the exact situation that you're dealing with. It's important to get those facts straight. The next thing is to ask yourself, how did this situation, this event happen? What are the actual facts of what happened? What are the actual facts of what happened? Not what you assume, not what you heard, not rumors, but the actual facts. It's important to do this, so that you don't suffer from things that are actually not true, things that are conjecture or rumors or assumptions or the way you imagined it happened. It's important to establish the actual facts of the events. How did this actually come about? What or who caused it? Because sometimes actually you can't pinpoint a person who has caused it. If there's a tsunami, who caused that? It is still a traumatic event, but the actual facts are that no actual human being caused it. The next thing to consider is to tell yourself, remind yourself that this thing has happened. You cannot change the past. You cannot change the past. If an event has happened yesterday, I can't change it. The only thing I can change is my attitude towards it, how I view it, what story I tell myself about it. But the actual facts of something that has happened, it has happened. Tell that to yourself. This thing has happened. I cannot change it. And so continuing to wrestle with why did it happen? And worrying and ruminating and going over and over the events is not going to change them. It's only going to cause you suffering. And then from there, you move on to start seeing yourself as a person who is accepting this situation. So statements like, I can't deal with this, I'm not going to do this, those are not going to be helpful situations. Start seeing yourself as one who is accepting this situation. And then moving forward, you then say to yourself, as a person who has accepted that I'm HIV positive, what kind of thoughts would I be entertaining about this situation? Certainly not thoughts around, this is not me, this is not my life, I'm not going to do this. Those are not thoughts and statements of someone who's accepted the situation. When you've accepted it, you would say things to yourself like, this has happened, I cannot change it, but I still have a life to live. And I can still live a full, healthy life. I can still meet my dreams and my purposes in this life. Ask yourself, what kind of thoughts would an accepting person have? And then determine in your mind that those are the thoughts that you're going to have. Ask yourself once again, what behaviors would I be doing? What actions would I be taking? Remember, at the beginning when I was talking about coupling acceptance with action, you ask yourself, what kind of actions and behaviors should I be doing if I've accepted that I'm HIV positive? So for example, there's some very practical things like, being more aware of your health, being more aware of what you eat. What do you need to do to keep your body healthy and strong, to keep your immune system strong? How can you help your body to live healthily with the HIV virus? Those are questions that you would ask yourself, and then those are actions that you would take. Perhaps you need to go and see your healthcare provider excuse me, have some discussions with them around what else you need to do. Perhaps you need to go at regular periods to go and get your viral load or your CD4 count checked. And also, when you get sick, what actions must you take? What natural remedies do you need to now start learning about so that you can take better care of your body as you live with the HIV virus? So those are actions that you now need to start thinking about instead of continuing to dwell in the past of why this happened. How did this happen? Where was I when this happened? You need to start looking into the future and asking yourself, what do I need to do to move on with my life? One of the things that also happens when something traumatic or hurtful or painful or bad happens to us is that we also react with our bodies. We respond with our bodies. There are certain sensations you feel in your body when you're dealing with something painful or hurtful. You then need to say to yourself, when I've accepted this situation, my body is no longer going to feel that way. So there's not going to be tension in my shoulders anymore. There's not going to be knots in my stomach anymore. I'm no longer going to be breathing shallow breaths here from my throat, but I'm going to be able to take full deep breaths that are relaxing, that are calming. And if your body is not there yet, then you can take some self-soothing steps in order to help your body to reach that state. So things like breathing exercises, relaxation techniques, things like exercise, walking, jogging, swimming, whatever exercise you prefer. Things like getting enough sleep, getting enough rest, getting a good diet. All those help your body to come to a calm, relaxed, natural state. Because often when you go through something difficult, you can go into this state where your body is constantly hyper alert, on guard, and not relaxed, and that's not healthy for your body. So then you accept this situation not only in your thoughts and in your behaviors, but also in your physical body and how your body sensations respond to this situation. This will also be linked to how you react to it in your emotions. If there are emotions of anger, if there are emotions of resentment, of hate sometimes, then you need to deal with those. And I would suggest that you find help, find a counselor, a psychologist, a pastor to talk to so that you can deal with your emotional response to this event. And when you resolve those negative emotions, it also helps you to go into a state of acceptance. Next, we then look at looking into the future. You need to remind yourself that this is not the end of the world. Yes, this has happened. You did not approve of it. You did not ask for it. And you would never wish it even on your worst enemy. But you still have a life to live. You still have a purpose to fulfill. You still have dreams to chase after. Sometimes you have children who need you. Sometimes you have a partner who needs you and a family that loves you. So remind yourself that this is not the end of the world and you can still live a full, healthy, resourceful life in this situation that has come into your life. Remember also that this situation can actually teach you some things about yourself, about God, about other people. Ask yourself, ask God, what meaning can I derive from this situation? What meaning or what richness can this experience add to my life? So I was living my life. I came into this situation, and then when I come out, what can I count and say? I've learned this and this and this. I've grown in this way and this way and this way because of this situation. Because remember that our God can work all things out for good for those who love him and who are called according to his purpose. And finally, my second last point, sometimes after you have started the practice of radical acceptance, you will still feel this resistance inside of you. That's all right. That's part of the journey. Remind yourself why you started the journey in the first place. Remind yourself the advantages of accepting your situation and the disadvantages of not accepting it. Remind yourself why this is actually good for you, that you practice radical acceptance and accept this thing that has happened or this situation that has presented itself into your life. And finally, as you go through this process, allow yourself to grieve. Because when you accept a difficult situation that has come into your life, you also accept that there are certain aspects of your life that you're going to lose. Sometimes it's actually the death of a person that you are needing to accept. So you will go through grieving, a grieving process. Sometimes it's a change of situation, and you know, some of these situations you're going to possibly live with them for the rest of your life. So you are going to grieve how your life was in the past, and that's all right. It's okay for you to grieve. So you will feel sad, you will feel disappointed. And I'm raising this so that if you should feel sad as you go through this process, it doesn't mean that you have derailed. It simply means that you're grieving. You're grieving what you have lost. If this sadness and this disappointment, and sometimes you can even have a period of depression in that process, if it is overwhelming, do get help. I encourage you to please find somebody to talk to so that you can deal with these emotions. Because if they become too intense, or if you become stuck in the grief, it can then also hinder your acceptance, your healing, and your growth. Accept that you are going to go through a grieving process. Accept also that you might need to go through a process of forgiveness, whether it is forgiving yourself or forgiving another person who has caused this situation to come into your life. Allow yourself again to go through that process. If it is too difficult for you at that moment or too overwhelming, I do encourage you to please get help. Let me end this episode here, and thank you so much for stopping by. I do hope that you were blessed and that this was useful to you. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments, or any suggestions for further topics, issues that you may want to be expanded. If you don't want to put your comment in public, you can also contact us on 063 220 5478. Those details are in our bio. And we'll be sure to respond to you. Once again, thank you so much for stopping by. Please share and like the video. Share the video, share the channel so that others may also subscribe. You never know who you might help, because a lot of us, when we go through difficult emotional situations, or when we have mental distress or even mental wellness, it's hard for us to share, and we don't always look like what we are going through. But when you share something like this, you might actually just change somebody's life. Thank you once again, and God bless.